I need to tell you, in the 4 months I've been here, I've identified an awful lot of positives in this district. There are a lot of good things going on, a lot of amazing things going on, and thanks to some of our foundation parents, Mindy and Katie Schell, they've helped us highlight it, brought more attention to all the good things that are going on in our district through the media. I mean, they've done an amazing job, and they're doing it on a volunteer basis. I want to acknowledge that right off the bat. Well, when we met in September, the board and I, we talked about whether or not they wanted me to do this job and whether or not I could do it. And one of the things I did offer, drawing on 11 years as superintendent in Moline, member of a number of committees with the ISB, including the Assessment Appeals Committee, and the Illinois Education Roundtable, and as president of the large unit district, which is LUDA, which Quincy is a member, I decided maybe I could do for you a systems analysis, kind of informal, nothing really scientific, but I can draw upon my experiences and offer my opinions and offer some recommendations for you for the future. As I told the board, and they told me very, very clearly, they can use them or they can ignore them. It's up to them. Obviously, the focus for the last few years, for many years, has been on the budgets and how to support funding for students, for staff, and for programs. You know, I've looked at the budget. I've spoken with Joel. I have a contact who was once the director of finance for the Illinois State Board of Education. So he used to actually stand up before the legislature and defend the ISBE budgets. So he has a lot of knowledge in terms of looking and analyzing budgets. And we fine-tooth combed it. We all looked at it, came up with some ideas, and basically everything we thought of, you've either thought of, decided you've done it, or you can't do it, and you've already looked at it. So kudos to this district for doing that. Unfortunately, 87% of our education fund dollars, go to staffing. That's, if you're going to do anything, that's where you're going to have to look at is the staffing, and you've already been doing that. So my concern is that since you've been doing it, at what point have you hit the point of diminishing returns? And maybe we'll look at some of the slides. Maybe we'll decide whether or not that's already happening. One thing that I've also noticed, because of all the conversation about finances, we don't talk a lot about kids at the board level. At the administrative level, the principals and staff, sure, because that's what we do every day. But at the board level, we haven't had much time to discuss that. So I think one of the things I would ask that you do, consider doing, is every board meeting, look at your agendas, decide on a set amount of time to devote to just curriculum instruction, student achievement, and go with that. But acknowledging them, briefly is nice, but let's hear about some of the things that are happening in the district programmatically. This is the district's mission statement. Again, returning our attention or focus to kids. In a safe and secure environment, each student in the Quincy Public School District will develop into a lifelong learner with the skills and knowledge necessary for the next steps in life. It's a good mission statement. So to prepare our students, our purpose is to prepare our kids for those next steps in life. What we need to be able to do is to give them the tools to compete on a global economic playing field by broadening the curriculum to create communicative, imaginative, tech-savvy, multilingual, and adaptable students who are ready to take on jobs that may or may not exist. Man, there are a lot of jobs out there that don't exist, which we need our kids to be ready for. We need to prepare them to be able to compete with kids from other countries who are already doing this. Unfortunately, in the United States, our focus is on reading and math. We're not talking as much about a comprehensive education as those other countries are. Here are some of the numbers for our district. There are 868 districts in the state of Illinois. Quincy is 40th with an enrollment of 6,522. Expenditures for all funds, about $74.5 billion. In the education fund, spending about $47.5 million. Instructional expenditure per pupil, this is the 10, 11 year, is $5,812. It's $1,000 below state average. Operating expenditure per pupil is $9,600. It's $2,000 below state average. With 1,100 full and part-time employees, Quincy is the second largest employer in the county. Here's historical enrollment, and when Joel and I looked at this and we saw this, we had no idea. Joel's question was, how do you go from, how do you lose 400 in 1 year and then gain 300 back the next year? So we're not sure if that's a blip, but overall, what I want you is look at it overall, trend-wise, and you'll see basically, for the last 10 years, we've been pretty steady enrollment-wise, between 6,500 and 6,600 kids. One of the things that we talked about is the growing poverty, and that's certainly evident here in Quincy. the green line is our district. You can see the yellow line, the gold line is the states, and you can see we consistently are above the state average in the amount of kids on free and reduced lunch. That presents a different set of problems, because if you look at the research, you talk about the research, the kids who are really most at risk are those living in poverty. Not so much with race as it is with poverty. Average class size. Again, the source of the 2012 school report card. And you'll see the state, we're green, the state is gold, and you can see we're pretty comparable, except here, 4th, 5th, 6th, where we're below state average. But then when we get to the upper grades, we do exceed the state average. I asked these 3 questions of all principals, and I expect them to use the answer to these questions to guide everything pretty much that they do, decision-wise, instructionally, with kids. If you can't answer these questions, then you're not doing your job, in my mind. The first 2, are your students learning, and how do you know? The third one is, what are you doing about it? Are your students learning? The answer in this district certainly is yes. How do you know? I'm going to show you some of the data. First of all, I want to show you, this is the No Child Left Behind Equal Steps model. Every year, or every other year, basically, the number to make adequate yearly progress increased. We're here, 92.5%. 92.5% of our students, all students, need to be meeting or exceeding on the ISAT in order for our school and or district to be considered making adequate yearly progress. That's why you're seeing so many schools be considered not failing, or not achieving, not passing, because they're trying to hit this mark with all of their kids. In Quincy, we're green, state is gold. ISAT reading in 3rd grade, you see we've been basically above the state average until just the last couple of years. 5th grade, pretty much the same, just a slight drop off the last 2 years. In 8th grade, we've been basically below the state average for about the last 5 years, but close, comparable. High schools is it's an interesting one. If you see, you notice the PSAE is a different test. It's tougher. Matter of fact, when we talk about Common Core a little bit, when you talk about Common Core, you understand that they're trying to raise the standards to be more in line with what happens with PSAE. But what you see here with green, when the state went up, we went up. When it went down, we went down. Here was the difference when they went down and we went up. But overall, our high school in reading has stayed pretty much above the state average. So again, just recently. ISAT math, pretty similar story. The green is we've been above the state average until the last few years. Last 2 years. ISAT math. In 5th grade and 8th grade. Again, the green is us. PSE, the high school. National Mag, we tend to be above and just slightly below recently. This is the ACT composite. This is a score that kind of many people look at it as like the are you ready for college test? The ACT and the SAT. The ACT is given in the Midwest. The SAT tends to be more on the coast. Our scores are here. The state averages are here. The blue is a national average. And the reason I put that in there is because the papers often quote how far behind nationally. And what people don't realize is most states, there are only about 6 or 9 states that have every student, every junior take this test. All the other states don't. I mean, they only have their college-bound kids take this test. So it's sort of an unfair comparison. I want to note that. But even factoring those states that give it only to kids who are college-bound, their average is 21. The state is 20.9. Our district is 20.7. Illinois, of the states that do require every student to take the test, is the leader. They have the highest scores for the 6 or 9 states, whatever it is, that force their kids, or not force, but require their kids to take the test. One thing I also want to note here is I want you to look at the gap. Back in 2004, the gap is here. As you look toward most recently, you see how much the gap is narrowed. Good progress. That's progress. That's what we call growth. Graduation rates, very positive. You see we've been above the state average quite a few years. So what's a typical QHS graduate look like? Well, 29% I've took this for the last Danielle and Jody helped with all the high schools athletics. I took the last 2 years, graduating class 11 and 12, and basically 29% go to four-year college, 48% are enrolled in 2 years, 5% military, 3% in some form of formalized training, but still education beyond high school, and 15% enter the workforce. So you got 80% of our kids who continue on with their educations, formal educations. This is one of my favorite quotes. What's happened to the economy? In Quincy, what I did was we did a comparison of the last 5 years of revenues to expenditures. The green being the revenues. And you see in 08, our revenues exceeded expenditures. In 09, they did not. In 10, they did not. But in 2011, they exceeded. And that's, I believe, a combination of error funds and I think the working cash transfers. And then you see for this recent budget, it's balanced. So where does the money come from? About 56% of it comes from local sources, property taxes and other local monies. The state provides 30%, and by constitution, the social provides 51%. We know that's never going to happen, but that's their share. And federal provides 14%. And I always like to make the comment about federal. They provide 14% of the money, but expect you to do 100% of what they say. How do we spend our monies by fund? 64% of all our money goes to the education fund. That pays the salaries, teachers. 7% goes to operation and maintenance, 5% for transportation, 11% for debt service, 3% for tort, 4% for IMRF, 7% for fire prevention and safety. Capital projects is on there, but there's not a slice because we have very little going on in capital projects wise. Here are your historical tax rates in Quincy since 01. It's $3.82 per $100 of assessed value of your home. So you see for quite a few years up to 06, it was pretty level. It spiked up in 07, it stayed level through 10, spiked back down 11, and it's pretty much stayed at that level ever since. And coincidentally, that seems lately is when we've done the most cutting. It might somewhat coincide with the amount of money that we're no longer bringing in. I threw this in sort of a tongue-in-cheek type of thing. This is Sample School District, but the color of the thing is not by coincidence. Us from Moline, we were the maroons. And so this is the fund balance. This is our fund balance. And the reason I'm showing this, Moline had the highest financial ranking in the state in terms of one of the level 4, which is the highest. It's because we had fund balance up to about 25 million after 07, 08. Then when the bottom started to fall out, we've had money to draw. But we made cuts, but we haven't had to make as drastic cuts or made these types of moves that we had to do with Quincy because of fund balances. So what does Quincy's look like? This is 0. You can see we stayed pretty much fund balances below negative, except for 12 and 13. If nothing happens after 13, we continue the same course we're going and don't make any changes. This is what will happen. It's projected to happen 14, 15, 16, and 17. The ed fund, like I said, was salaries. So people think, well, that's because your staff make too much money. And so what I want to show you is this next graphic. This graphic is again from the school report card. You can draw it yourself. This compares the average salaries of teachers throughout the state with those in Quincy. The average salary in the state is about $66,600. In Quincy, it's about $47,000. For administrators, the average is about $111,000. For Quincy, it's about $93,000. I also did as a member of LUDA, we do a salary survey. And we did analysis. There are 49 of the LUDA districts. These are the largest K-12 districts in the state. 49 districts contribute to the study. In just about every category, salary-wise, teacher salary-wise, Quincy was ranked 48th or 49th. So I guess I'm not making a plea for you to go ahead and give every teacher a raise. What I do want to say to you is that you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, because if you look at when you look at test scores, considering what they have and what they're working with, they're doing a heck of a job. And then again, and I will tell you, they are our greatest assets, your staff and your administration. When I first came, I visited every school, visited 3 to 5 classrooms in every school, sat down with every single principal, watched as many as I could, conduct staff meetings. And when I sat down with principals, I asked them if I could give you 3 wishes to make your school better, what would they be? And almost to a person, they talked about respect and support for their staffs. To be recognized for what they do, acknowledged for what they do, and be supported. The one closely behind, the third highest ranking response was be provided direction, to get some direction from our board, from our administration about where you want to go. And we're going to talk about that. So what are some of the upcoming challenges, at least in my eyes? Certainly, number one, it has to do with kids, providing a comprehensive education for all of our students. And we're talking character ed, we're talking the arts, we're talking vocational, we're talking technical, because not all kids are going to go to 4-year college, not all kids want to go, not all kids need to, but we need to provide the opportunities for them to be successful, whether they go into the world of work or on to college. We also, as you know, are facing increasing poverty and diversity, decreased funding and staffing, and we have the Common Core that we need to be implementing. And I talked about 92.5% benchmark for all subgroups to make AYP. Add to that the fact that there are going to be new cut scores for the ISAT, going to be based on higher performance level to better align with the Common Core standards. Yet to be determined means that we have a moving target. But one thing we do know for sure is the number of kids who make AYP is going to go down. And that'll happen across the state. Also on the horizon, in beginning 2014 and 15, the new assessment should be in place, the PARCC assessment. It needs to be inputted, and it has to be it'll be done online only, no more paper pencil. Kids will have to be able to take this test online. Also on the horizon, or at least to be considered, is the waiver for No Child Left Behind. The state submitted a waiver. It has not been approved, but we anticipate it happening at some point. We don't know what they're going to approve, what they're not going to approve, what's going to happen. So there's another bit of uncertainty. Lastly, you will have 3 new board members in April, and beginning in July of next year, you will have almost a completely different central office, with Chris Vineyard being on, retirements of Jody Cooper and Christy Dickens, and a new superintendent. So that can be a really exciting time. But it's also kind of a nervous time as well, because you're losing a lot of institutional knowledge, but you've got a lot of institutional knowledge here. Okay? And you have a board that's really becoming more and more supportive every day. So what are we doing about it? The third question was, and the first question was, are your kids learning? And the second question was, how do you know? And the third question is, what are you doing about it? Well, in this district, we're identifying the areas in need of improvement by reviewing data. We're identifying and developing intervention for students who are not meeting standards. We're aligning staff development activities and resources to goals. We're implementing new technologies, including soon to hit the market, the district-wide wireless capability to provide greater access to resources and instructional opportunities for kids. How do we get there? My parents stole something from me. Not just dream big, but dream bigger. And if you make every decision in the context of how it will affect students and student achievement, I think we're well on the way to doing it the right way. To do the type of thing we need to do. If everything you do, every decision you make, whether it be building, curricular, instructional, whatever, inside you, one of the questions is how it's going to affect kids and their achievement, will be okay. Here's some recommendations. First of all, we've talked about this, is to develop, implement, and complete. Not just develop one, not just put one on paper, and not just bring everybody together to put one together, but actually see it through from year 1 to 3 or 5, whichever you decide to do. I've been involved in 3 strategic plans, basically been the facilitator for 2, and the one in Moline, we made sure we followed through on, and it does make a difference because you're bringing in stakeholders' input in order to develop the plan. I took the liberty of basically what most of them have in common is basically 4 or 5 common themes. The first one, and obviously it belongs in every strategic plan, is student achievement. One of my recommendations certainly is that we develop a curriculum infrastructure, formal curriculum infrastructure. And that includes a 7-year adoption cycle. There should be some activity, some discussion about reading, math, science, social studies, fine arts, whatever, on a yearly basis with the K-12 committee. They should be talking about how it's going to affect them in elementary, middle, and high school. When they talk about adoptions, this should be in line so that when they go from level to level, there isn't a loss. There aren't different people doing different things. The adoption cycle also gives us the opportunity to provide for staff horizontal and vertical articulation. By horizontal, I mean giving grade levels a chance to talk. How often do all of the kindergarten teachers or all the third grade or fifth grade teachers have a chance to get together and talk about common issues and brainstorm with each other? This provides the opportunity for that. Vertical articulation is K through 12, where they all get together and talk specifically about specific subjects, reading, math, science, social studies, and then come up with adoptions, look at assessments together, look at the latest research, look at piloting materials, but having conversations about what we're putting in front of kids. The other recommendation that I believe will improve student achievement is explore the possibility of restructuring schools. Looking at possibly K-5, 6-8, 9-12. At the very least, do something about the ninth graders being at the junior high. If I were to make a recommendation or prioritize, I'd do what we could to bring the ninth graders back with the other high school students. Right now, right now I feel like they're undergoing two transitions. One from in the same building. One to ninth grade at the junior high, and then from ninth grade to senior high. Another area that you might consider is facilities and technology. We're already doing the first one, implementing, and the second part, supporting, is critical, the wireless infrastructure. The generosity of the NAPIDES, we were able to really get moving and implementing this, but we got to be able to support it. The next thing we need to do is develop a long-range facilities plan. You have some bonds coming up in the near future. It would be wise to tie that into possible restructuring, reconfiguring of your schools. But in the meantime, improve the surroundings of each of your buildings relative to safety, aesthetics, playgrounds, and transportation. Another suggested strategic objective, parent and community involvement. This is critical for us. There's 70% of the population don't have anything to do with schools. They don't have a student in school, they don't have grandkids in school, they don't have a cousin in this. So you have to convince those 70% that this is something worth supporting. I'll give you the Chamber of Commerce speech. You have to have good schools in order to bring businesses in. How do we do this? Well, you involve parents and community in development and implementation of the strategic plan. Encourage them to be involved in schools and suggest ways for them to do it. Don't say just show up. Tell them how to show up and what to do. This, I think, is really critical. Be transparent. Do everything you can, as much as you can, in public. Don't make decisions and there are some things you cannot describe, you cannot talk about in public, but those that you can, be very, like what we're doing right here, is doing this in public. And I took this from our realtors. Instead of location, I talk about communicating, whatever method or media you can think of, whether it be newsletters, through the internet, through our school reach, news, whatever method you can think of. But you're better off inundating, bombarding folks with information than not. Continuous improvements. Be data-driven. Assess everything that you do, support those strategies that are meeting student needs, and then get rid of or change those that don't. Perhaps. Encourage and expect your staff to grow professionally, and then give them opportunities to do so. Finally, sustainability. You need to be able to keep it going. And certainly, critical to that is certainly our leadership that we're getting, that we'll be receiving from the board. Thank you, board candidates, for being here tonight. They will provide direction, and we need to provide professional development for our board as well, so that they can continue to grow in their positions. Pursue equitable and alternative funding resources. That's easier said than done, I realize that, but we need to continue to do that. And consider the R word only as a last resort. Does anybody know what the R word is? Referendum. Only as a last resort. You hear that, guys? Finally, let me thank the board for allowing me to come back and complete this cycle. I started my career as a student teacher at Berry Ann in the kindergarten, Mrs. Bush's kindergarten. And to come back as a superintendent kind of just helps me to kind of just complete my professional cycle. I do wish you well during your transition. The road will be long, but I feel like the pieces and your opportunities are in place for QPS to become even more effective in preparing our kids for what lies ahead. Thanks. Do you have any questions?